Now 5 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If Clerk Segrist could call the roll.
Trustee Anthony,
Present.
Foster,
Good evening.
Graham Hudek,
Good evening.
Segrist here, Slavens,
Good evening.
Snyderman,
I'm here.
Williams.
Hello. Call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call vote on the motion. Clerk Segrist.
Anthony,
Yes.
Foster,
Aye.
Graham Hudek,
Aye.
Segrist, aye. Slavens,
Aye.
Snyderman,
Aye.
and Williams.
Hello. Hi. We've got tonight's a study session. We've got 2 items on the agenda. First up is Wendy Trumbull and her team on the 2021 budget discussion. And then we're going to follow up with an update from Canton Leisure Services. So Wendy, when you are ready, go ahead and take control.
I am ready. Clerk Segrist, I forgot to mention, I think Carolyn Cox is on, and if you wouldn't mind promoting her to a panelist in case a question comes up she might need to speak to. Thank you. First of all, thanks for attending. It's our first real budget presentation over Zoom, so we'll see how we can make this work and talking about numbers all over the computer. Carolyn did a lot of work and it was difficult this year, as you can imagine, trying to get all of the budget things taken care of. So typically this time of year, we're going over the changes in the next year's budget prior to asking the board to adopt it. But not only that, typically we're also looking at the budget for the subsequent year out. This year, we did not prepare the 2022 budget yet. Number of departments, obviously, we all know were furloughed. We didn't have people back to actually prepare that budget. And this is actually similar to what we did 4 years ago during an election year. We actually waited to present it to make sure everybody who was coming into office effective with the November election would have an opportunity to review that also. So it, not only COVID, it kind of works out anyway. So the plan right now for the 2022 budget would be to review that with the upcoming board in February of 22, which is kind of the same timetable February of 21, similar to what we would have done 4 years ago. So similar, I'm going to do a similar presentation to what I would have done last year, but instead of, hopefully you can all see it on your screen, instead of going through next year's, I'm just going to go through the changes from what the board would have already seen. So last week we sent out a couple documents. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review them, but they were really a summary of what the budget adjustments that we are going to be bringing forth in the budget we're going to ask the board to adopt next month for 21. And then also a summary of what that looks like for overall fund balance. So let's see if I can figure out how to advance the slide here. Maybe, there we go. Okay, so just as a reminder for the 21 revenue assumptions, the property taxes were based on the tax bill value at December 31st of 19. So there was a slight inflation factor in there that we talked about a year ago. I believe it was about 2% that was in there. And the property tax millage rate is what the board has adopted in September when we took those millage rates to the board. Also, the state shared revenue is based on the state's estimation. Again, we talked about this when we looked at 2020. The state had expected the revenue to go down during 2020 because of COVID. Then in May, they expected it to go down about $700,000 of an impact to Canton Township. In August, they updated that back to almost what they had initially projected it to be. And the 21 revenue numbers were close to what we had initially put in the budget. So those are unchanged from what the board initially would have seen. On the expenditure side of things, the wage increases, wages are part of our largest, wages and fringes are part of our largest expenses. The wage increases are based on what was in the union contracts. The pension cost increase was averaged about 15% between the hybrid and defined benefits. And the medical cost increase was about 10%. Additionally, we continued to include the pre-funding of OPEB for $1 million, which is what we've been historically averaging our pre-funding to be for that. So with that, I don't know if you can see my mouse on here, but I'll kind of try to go down and show the highlights of the different areas. What you would have received in your packet, and I don't know again if you have it open or printed, these differences here on this third column was detailed out in the presentation that I sent you in the first one. So initially what we had shown the board in October of 19 to use fund balance in the general fund was about $371,000. Now we're going to ask the board to project a use of fund balance of about $900,000 in the general fund. So that's a decrease of about $538,000. That's due to many factors. Some of the largest differences were due to making some adjustments for the wages that the contracts that had been finalized after the initial budget for 21 had been prepared. There was an estimation of the revenue decreases for leisure services due to COVID carryover into 21 for about $122,000. We had a net increase for sidewalk programs of $55,000. There was actually a revenue increase for the sidewalk program of about $230,000, but the expenses of $285,000 for that. We had IT increase some expenses for some phone updates. HR had some legal fee estimated increases for about $30,000. Building and planning and engineering increased about $50,000 for capital projects. And again, an additional $50,000 for dangerous building demolition. That in the end would have also a revenue impact, but it's typically not in the same year. That typically ends up a lien on people's property if we have to pay for that. And then leisure services also decreased expenses for about $41,000 in various departments due to offset the actual increases or decreases in the revenue for leisure services as well. That's a primary difference here. I expect what's going to happen is there's going to be more budget adjustments for 21 that's going to actually draw that down further. When I was going through looking at some numbers, there was some capital that was deferred from 2020, some vehicles during COVID that the board had previously approved to purchase that the department said we'll hold off on purchasing some of these items right now. We're not sure what it looks like, the financial projection. So there were some vehicles the board approved in January or February of 2020 that we held off on. I expect those to go back into the budget in 21 or a request to put those back in the budget in 21. So this might even go down a little bit more. Roads fund had a very minor difference for $734,000 use of fund balance. Fire funds actually looks better. They went from using fund balance of $54,000 to adding fund balance of $86,000, or excuse me, adding it of $32,000 for a difference of $86,000. That is primarily due to a decrease in salaries due to a reduction in headcount for a position. That's primarily what that one was due to. Police fund has the same story. They were going to use fund balance at $840,000. Now it's about $771,000 due to the same position change. And also there's a reduction in some capital, and you'll see more of that in a future slide. The community center fund, this fourth one down, that's the summit. We're projecting an additional loss there of $57,000. That's again due to a decline in the expected revenue due to COVID. Some of the expenses were also decreased, but not quite as much as the revenue had declined. I should also note that leisure services, and Greg can speak to this if there's any further questions, but leisure services is still reviewing their staffing plan. They've had a number of open positions, and there's likely going to be some changes into the staffing levels at leisure services, but they're just not sure what that looks like quite yet. So I think Director Hohenberger is expecting to have one position eliminated from their budget, but they're just not quite sure what that looks like yet. So that'll come forth to the board at a future date as a budget adjustment. Going down the list, this capital projects fund of $5.8 million change. That's because the revenue for the bond issue, when we were thinking about doing a bond issue over 2 years, we had budgeted the revenue for that bond issue in 21, but obviously we did all that in 20. So that revenue, so it looks like we're using fund balance of 5.8. It's because we already have the bond money. Actually, we closed on that today. So we got our money today deposited into our bank. The rest of these are pretty minor changes. The golf course is going the right direction for adding to fund balance, or going the right direction for about $28,000. Same thing with the water and sewer fund for, oops, sorry about that. How did I do that? $63,000. This next slide talks about the capital projects. So we already talked about all these capital projects. These are not the capital projects that are part of the CIP program. These are equipment types of items, not necessarily infrastructure. They are not part of the CIP program. Everything highlighted in green are the changes from what the board would have initially seen. So you can see this first one here at Pheasant Rung, there's an ATV that was added to the budget for $26,000. However, they took away a van down below for $26,000. So they just allocated it, moved it from a vehicles to a piece of equipment for the exact same dollar amount. We have an inspector vehicle for $40,000 that was added to the budget. And here, I talked about this a little bit on the previous slide when I talked about the increase, what some of the additional costs that we were incurring in 2021 that we weren't expecting. There's a plan review project, which Director Smith could talk about if there are questions on it, but it's making reviewing plans electronically capable. There's been a big push to try to have allow developers and site plans to be provided electronically, and this is allowing for electronic review and some pretty cool technology. So this $20,000, $10,000, and $20,000. So this $50,000 total is all part of that one project. There's no other changes in the non-public safety capital. The changes in public safety capital, there was no changes in the fire funds or 911 funds. But the police fund, you can see that initially there was a budget of about $170,000 for this DNA rapid hit ID. Director Baugh can speak to that, but my understanding right now is that technology is not quite ready yet, so they're not quite ready to make that purchase. So they took that out of the budget, added some computers, some rugged laptops, and then some patrol vehicle conversion parts, some equipment for live scan, and then some security camera replacements at $70,000. Again, as I just mentioned, the 2021 capital projects, what I just went over does not include what's on the CIP plan. We have about $15,750,000 that we're expecting to spend between 2020 and 2021 on the capital that we just went to the board with. We closed on that bond today. The good news on that, and I sent a message to the board some time ago, we got a really great interest rate on that bond. If you were to look at it, it looks like it actually has interest rate of ranging from 3 to 5% on each individual year. However, when we sold the bonds, they gave us basically $2.5 million of extra money because they bought our bonds of what is called a premium. So when we sold our bonds, we said we wanted to sell them for $16 million, but we ended up selling them for about $13.5 million. We got this extra cash, so we only owe $13 million back. We've got almost $16 million of cash, and that $13 million interest rate is, depending on what year, it's between 3 and 5%. But when you factor in that free money of the $2.5 million that we received up front, that averaged our interest rate out to be about 1.17% or 1.71%, less than 2%. So that was a very great interest rate. So that's good news for the township. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over this. We talked about it. I know talking numbers gets really boring to some people, but if there's any questions specifically on any of the revenues or expenses or looking at it, what this next slide shows is here's what the actual revenue was for 17, 18, and 19. This is what we had budgeted for 2020. This is as of a couple weeks ago. I fully expect that there's going to be some revenue and expense adjustments that comes back before the board in December of 2020. We do that every year just to make sure we're in compliance with the Budget Act, that there's nothing over budget. And just to make sure we're in violation or in compliance with the state's budgeting act. So like just looking at this first line item right here, you can see the general fund revenue budgeted as it stands today is 27 million. Ooh, gosh darn it. I clicked. Is $27 million. But when you look at 21, we've got the budgeted revenue to be about $28.7 million. We're not actually expecting the revenue to go up by that much money. This budget right now still has a decrease in the state shared revenue that we were expecting, the $700,000. So when we bring this budget amendment back in December, that will go back up. So I do still anticipate some budget adjustments in there. Same thing, we did the same thing for the expenditures by fund, just looking at the year over year actuals, what the 2020 budget is and the 21 budget. Based on as things currently stand today, this 2020, this is the 2021 analysis of fund balance. If we looked at what the proposed fund balance was for 2020, so that's based on where the fund balance would be at the end of 2020 if it came in at what it was at 19 and took into account the revenues that were budgeted for 20 and the expenditures that were budgeted for 2020. And this is what the fund balance would be. Based on what we are asking the board, we will be asking the board to approve at the next meeting, at the meeting on November 10th. We would be asking the board to approve a budget using fund balance of general fund for $909,000. That would leave fund balance in the general fund of about $13 million. So you can see in all of the different funds, the roads fund would have a $2.3 million fund balance, fire would have 3.8, police would have 6.1, so on and so forth, going right down the line. We are, with this budget, we are still exceeding the board's goal of having a 15% fund balance level. And again, this is just a snapshot in time. We can always amend the budget later and make revisions to it. So before I go to 2020 projections, kind of where I think we're ending with 2020, are there any questions on the 2021 under the numbers I just went through? Or for any of the other directors?
Anne Marie?
Thank you. I'm just wondering for the roads budget, were there any expenditure changes due to the COVID? I mean, I know construction kind of changed there for a while.
Is Jade on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
I believe there were some of the projects that got project started later, but I believe they all done as planned. But Jade, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was on a call earlier and they had a problem hearing me, so I'm not sure what was going on. No, in regards to the roads budget, we have not seen any sort of decrease in regards to any county contributions for the county projects. And all of our projects are actually on target to be completed. We're actually finished with the 17 subdivision projects, and we're already gearing up for the 2021 projects and working with those associations. I just met with the engineers this morning, actually yesterday, in regards to proposing the 2021 projects, but we are moving forward and there have been no cuts to the road projects this year.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks.
Wendy, can you eliminate the PowerPoint so I can see everybody's faces a little bit clearly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, hold on. Let me see if I can stop sharing.
Well, who's talking or not talking? And Anne Marie may have more questions. But
Yep.
the other thing I'd like to add is I think we did discuss as a board how the administration in Wayne County did try to pull away, I don't know, 400,000 or 700,000. And the good news, it was a quick call to Warren, and he did reverse his staff's direction. So that did stay intact for us, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just a real quick update too. I'm actually preparing an RBA for the next board meeting to go into with Wayne County for $1.1 million of reimbursable expenses. This was a previous commitment by the county executive back when the millage was passed, but the IGA was never completed. So we're at that point to get that IGA completed, and then we're ready to submit the invoices to the county to get that money back.
Oh, great. Okay.
Anne Marie, did you have follow-up? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one more. So did any of our neighborhoods take advantage of the street lighting fund? It seems like it stays pretty stable. And I'm wondering if anyone actually uses it. Do you see that they are using it?
Yeah, so we have a number of special assessments where we get the bills from Detroit Edison and we bill the homeowners association through their special assessments. So that's utilized every year. It stays very consistent each year. We get the bills, we have to estimate what the future year's bills are going to be, and we end up billing the homeowners associations based on what the actual bills come in at.
Are we seeing any interest? Because I know so there's some people that say their neighborhoods are, real dark, and I've talked to them about these monies. Have you seen anybody else come in and ask for them?
This isn't free money. This is that basically their streetlights are hooked up under our electricity plan, and then we bill back the residents.
Right. So if they want to add lighting, they would use this fund? They want to add lighting to their subdivisions, or?
This isn't taxpayer dollars. These are dollars basically that we're paying. We're kind of this flow through from what the actual expenses from DTE are coming in on behalf of these homeowners associations. So they're metered as such. I haven't heard of anybody else wanting to be part of the program. I don't think there's been any new associations trying to hook up to this program, but it's not like if there's a homeowner association that's dark, we just have this money sitting around for them to be able to use for their streetlights. It's actually based on streetlights being hooked up, the township's getting the bill from DTE, and then we bill the associations back to pay us back for their electricity usage.
Yeah, so it's energy costs, not capital.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then one more thing is the vehicles that we're looking at. Are we looking at including any of the hybrid vehicles in our fleets for our replacements? You had said that we were putting off getting some vehicles, and I was wondering if we're looking at any hybrids to replace them.
Jade, are you aware of that?
Yeah, it's not something that I've spoken about with Clark, but it's definitely something that we could look at. I don't believe that, at least for MSD, I know the vehicles that were being purchased, one for the inspectors actually needs to have four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive to get into some of the developments, but I couldn't speak towards the other vehicles.
Okay, yeah, if we could look at that for the next purchases, thank you.
For sure.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Thanks, Director Trumbull. The only question I had was I was trying to read the OPEB lines, the OPEB fund lines, if you could bring those back up. And I was just trying to match up revenues and expenses, and it looks, when I look at the detail that you send, it looks like it gets zeroed out. In other words, we put in whatever we need to put in to pay for those benefits for that year. Is that true?
Yeah, so yes, the fund itself basically is a break-even fund. We charge the various funds for retirement invoices. So
Depending on where they worked.
right, depending on where they retired from, that they pay for the cost of the retirees. And then out of that fund, and we also charge the $1 million to that fund. When we pay the $1 million out, that goes into a trust for to hold on behalf for future retiree medical costs. We don't use anything out of that fund. So this does not represent what's in the OPEB fund. This is basically what we're contributing into the OPEB fund. These are actually the retiree costs.
When you showed those from 2017 to 2020 or 21, it looked like there was a big decrease from 17 to 18, I think it was, from like 6-some million down. Can you remind me if we renegotiated something or?
No, we had actually, if you recall, we had a year that we had done better. We had some extra fund balance at the end of the year, and we had determined to make an extra contribution. I think we actually contributed $3 million that year.
So that was included in that number that is showing up in 2017 or whatever it was.
Yep, that was showing up in 2018. It went from
2018.
3.5 million in 17 to 6.2 million in 18.
Okay, that's.
And then it
that
went
was-
back down to 4.9 million.
Okay, and that's pretty much where it stays in the 4 millions for 19 and 20 and 21.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. If you recall, at the end of 2019, we paid that extra $8 million. We chose to put that $8 million into the pension costs. So we still pre-funded the OPEB at the million, but the excess fund balance that we had last time, we decided to pre-fund into the pension to get that,
Yep.
try to get that caught up a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't remember which one we did, so thanks for reminding me. But yeah,
You're welcome.
okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, I don't see any additional comments or questions. Do you have additional material now you'd like to cover, Wendy?
Yeah, I just wanted to cover one last item. I'm gonna share my screen one more time. Oops. Okay, do you see the whole screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I've got 3 screens happening at the same time. I want to make sure you're looking at the one I think you're looking at. So I wanted to touch base on where 2020 looks to be ending up. And based on current projections at this point in time, the good news is that it looks like we're going to break even in the general fund. And I'm talking 101 general fund, not any of the other items from an accounting standpoint that technically fall under the general fund category. This is the 101 that you would see when we ask you to approve the budget. General fund saved approximately $685,000. I didn't write that English very well, but general fund saved about $685,000 through the furlough days. If you recall, back in May, when the state gave their updated estimate on the state shared revenue, we thought we were gonna have about a $700,000 loss. So through the end of August, beginning of September, which is when the majority of the staff came out of the furlough days, or the majority of the remainder of the staff that hadn't come out of the furlough days, we thought we were going to lose about $700,000, and we actually saved about $685,000. So at the end of the day, from that regard, we accomplished what our goal was. And then the state came back and said that we were going to come almost to where we thought we were going to end up in the beginning for the state shared revenue. So that was good news. So we saved some money. The majority of the employees were really not financially impacted as far as the bi-weekly pay, because they were getting the additional $600 from the federal government through the work share program. So we were able to save some money as well. We also have some additional savings due to not filling some of the vacated positions that we have. Additionally, there was a few positions that, if you recall, we had offers out, but we held off on bringing them in until we were getting back to a more normal work schedule. And we're still down some vacated positions. And I know Director Hohenberger, as I mentioned earlier, is working through what his department is going to look like. And we will likely at the end still have one less position that we're not planning to fill from a general fund perspective. So we are still continuing to see savings from not filling some of these positions. We also had significant savings from the decrease in the part-time wages. I know there are some departments that did have part-time wages that came back as needed. The golf course, obviously golf course was doing very well this year. They had, I believe, record revenue, as that was one of the activities people could go out and enjoy. So there are part-time people there. I believe there was part-time people that were brought back to help get some of the mowing done at the park so people could enjoy the parks and they could be cleaned up. And I believe a couple of the other departments did have some part-time wages, but those 2 departments probably have the most significant part-time wages. We also deferred many capital items, which will likely increase the 21 budget. As you can see, as I talked about already, there were some vehicles that were deferred. There's some network equipment that was deferred from an IT perspective that will likely turn around and we'll need some. And the sidewalk program, because that one did get pushed back, the timing got pushed back on that. There's a not very many of them, but some of them also did not get completed during 2020. Also, the one that we didn't talk about here, Community Center Fund, so that's the summit again, they're going to use more fund balance than budgeted. Typically, we have always made them whole. And by that, what I mean is whatever fund balance they're projecting to use each year, the general fund transfers money over to make them whole. They have some fund balance sitting available to them. I expect that they're going to use, based on current projections, about $300,000 of that fund balance that they had set aside in 2020. So we'll see what happens, and we'll bring forth a budget adjustment if we need to. But I'm not planning on transferring any money from general fund. So when I say general fund looks like it's breaking even, that's assuming we don't transfer any money over to the summit, or that we don't need to because they already have their own little pool of fund balance available to them at this point in time. There's still some unknowns. You know, the summit is open now. I'm not sure if the revenues, you know, if that's going to require more subsidy because the participation probably isn't what it was, but I'm not sure that the expenses are going to be what they were. So there's still a little bit of unknowns with that. But there is a good story that the 2020, we do think we're going to break even. You know, we did think we were going to use fund balance, but then again, we also think that there's going to be more expenses that we haven't brought forth to the board yet to approve that might increase the need to use some of this fund balance that we didn't use in 2020 in 2021. That's all I had on the 2020, but again, I'm happy to answer any questions associated with that, and I'll stop sharing my screen so we can see the board.
Any comments, questions? Before we do that, we don't have a public portion here, do we? So are there any additional comments or questions? Steve, were you? No? Okay. Seeing none. Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well done.
And again, the plan is that we'll be bringing this, we have to post this in the newspaper that we're going to be asking for the board to approve the budget. So we are planning to bring this to the meeting on November 10th for formal adoption.
One more bite at the apple on the 10th. Very good. If we could now, we'll switch over to Director Hohenberger. I don't know if you've got anybody joining you that needs to be elevated as a presenter as well, Greg. You're muted right now. And we'll thank you, Wendy. We'll kick it now over to Greg.
All right, so I don't have anyone else that's going to be joining via Zoom. I do have John Lefevre and Jason Lombardo in the room with me. Should we have any particular questions that they may help out with during the presentation here. So I will go ahead and share my screen. There we go. All right, here we go. Okay, so just talked with Pat last week about doing a general update on leisure services, where we are, what we've done throughout the year, and kind of what our next steps for offering services to our residents is. I'm gonna move some stuff around on our screen. Okay. So Wendy touched on some of the stuff that's already open within our department. So Pheasant Run, we were able to open the golf course late April of this year. The farmers market came next on July 12th. Next, the sports center, we opened that up the 1st of August. Heritage Park, we had our We Go Round grand opening on the 11th. Then next came our outdoor fitness. Looks like we have farmers market listed there twice. Sorry, typo there. But outdoor fitness classes came in mid-September, and then we started virtual and online programs for several different areas. Summit on the Park being our latest facility opening, starting on October 5th of this month. Many of you were at our grand opening for Copper Park last week on the 15th, and then we have several seasonal events that have started or will be happening. Actually, those that are listed there have all happened already. So some of kind of an overview of what's happened. As Director Trumbull mentioned, we've had a really fantastic year at Pheasant Run. We reopened on April 27th. And when we did reopen, keep in mind that we opened on a limited basis. We were not initially offering carts, which at Pheasant Run, that's a very long course to walk. So many people were limiting themselves to only 9 holes or not coming out at all. And we were also spreading our tee times out 20 minutes when normally we go to 10. So that kind of limited our ability to get people in as well. Driving range didn't open until mid-May, and then the grill and pro shop didn't open until June. So a lot of those things put us way behind on our revenue for the year. But due to the fantastic participation that we've had, the leagues playing, people coming out, our 2020 revenue year to date is ahead of our 2019 year to date total revenue for the golf course. And if you remember, 2019 was a record year for Pheasant Run. So the fact that we have some, like the grill, for example, had 3 months of no sales, and the pro shop the same way. Driving range had 2 months of no sales. To be ahead of 2019, I think is just a fantastic testament to our staff that they really put their heart and soul into getting that facility up and running. It looks fantastic. The course is in great shape. So our maintenance staff has done a great job. We've had a lot of people step outside of their normal roles to really help the course out, because we didn't have part-time staff for a while. So we had full-time staff, cable staff that's never even been to a golf course out there running the front desk, and they've done a fantastic job. So kudos to all of them. Next up on our list for opening was the Sports Center. Even though we didn't open until August 1st, since then, we've had some fantastic participation with our softball leagues. It's kind of hard for us to compare year to year because we typically would not be starting a league on August 1st, but for the time frame that we had for leagues to get in this year, to have 92 teams on short notice was a really outstanding response, and a great job by our staff proactively reaching out to all the different teams to get them signed up. Sports tournaments out there, we had over 600 teams participate since August 1st. GCYBSA, I think this is fantastic. Their numbers there, 1,800, over 1,800 players this year. That is equivalent to the number of players that they had last year in GCYBSA. Summer was a little bit down, but fall, they were actually up in their participation compared to fall of last year. And then we also had some other smaller programs down at the bottom that you can see that were very successful as well. The Village Theater, we're looking at doing some things out there. Currently, the only things that are happening, planning commissions meetings. We've had a couple board meetings out there, and then we're doing a rental on Sundays for a church that's out there. We're currently working on updated operating procedures, evaluating the health department regulations for what we can do to make sure that if we do something out there, if and when we do something out there, that we do it in a safe manner that meets or exceed all the different guidelines that are out there right now. We're optimistically looking at potentially starting rehearsals in mid-November with some virtual hybrid in-person performances with limited audiences, maybe starting in January of 2021. And then we'll have to modify our staffing levels or increase our staffing levels as needed based on the facility needs, because we'll have to bring ushers back and house managers and those sorts of things. So we would have, as we bring some programs back, we would have some part-time wages. And as Director Trumbull alluded to, we have our org chart that we need to get figured out for leisure services, and that would include a full-time position. As you know, Joe Kavoriak left us in the spring just before COVID hit, so we've been without a performing arts coordinator all summer. And then if you look at the photos on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see that our audience seats are currently being reupholstered. That kind of got put on hold for a little bit with COVID, but we just started that process. So you can see the top shows our full house seating. The bottom picture shows kind of the skeleton of the frames for all of our chairs. Those were removed just yesterday, and they're being shipped down to Georgia where they're going to be reupholstered. The wood will be refinished. They'll bring all those back, reinstall them, and then take the second half of the chairs. By doing it this way, it still allows us to service the church, any planning commission meetings or board meetings or otherwise. We can also put some some of our stackable chairs in there if we need to meet the needs of our different groups. Summit on the Park, I touched on that just a little bit, that we reopen on August 5th. We delayed that, or not August 5th, October 5th. Sorry about that. We delayed that from when the governor's orders initially allowed us to, so that we could be sure that we got all of our procedures in place, had proper staffing levels and different safety measures, not only for our staff, but also for our guests. During the first 2 weeks, we've had over 290 people restart their memberships, and we're getting about 80 to 100 people a day through the building, which is significantly lower than our normal rates. But one, the pool is closed, and two, we're not back to our full operational levels. And we knew when we started, whether it be October 5th or, May 5th of next year, that we knew it would start slow. And that's kind of a good thing. It allows us to work out any kinks and make sure that we're able to meet the needs of those that are coming in, and then slowly build from there. Starting in mid-September, we began offering a variety of outdoor fitness classes. And now that the weather is turning, we are transitioning those inside, and those classes currently will be limited to 10 people. So keeping them outside as long as possible allowed us to meet the needs of more people, but we're going to have to change that as we move inside. Kind of our next steps in here, we're going to start expanding our operations a little bit in early November. We're going to start allowing drop-in visits. Currently, it's only members that are allowed to use the building, and opening up the fitness locker rooms to actually allow people to use lockers and showers in the facility. We've been allowed to, based on the restrictions, to do that this full time, but we haven't done that just because we wanted to, as I mentioned, kind of ease our way back then. And we're going to start doing some designated open gym time slots where you can reserve some time. It won't be something where you can go with a group of 10 people and play a full contact basketball game or something. But if a family wants to come in and shoot around on the basketball court, we'll allow them to do that and then be distanced from any other group. So it would just be a family group that can come in together. As I mentioned, the aquatic center remains closed. We're starting the copper roof replacement. We've got bids out currently they go out Thursday of this week for replacement of the tiles. The tile replacement will be every tile in the aquatic center, as well as the family and special accommodations locker room, and both the men's and women's aquatics locker room. So that's going to be a significant tile project. And then we're looking at reopening the aquatic center early 2021. That's going to depend a lot on the tile schedule as well as the roof schedule. Hopefully we can get if we can structure the tile contractor to be able to start in the pool and then work their way to the locker room, then we can get in the pool to allow the public to utilize that. We're proposing to return our full-time aquatic specialist on November 2nd of this year. As you may recall, that position is the only position that currently remains laid off due to COVID, and that was primarily because the aquatic center has been closed. We're proposing to bring him back because if we're going to open in early 2021, we need to get him back in to start training and hiring and recruiting new lifeguards. Every lifeguard that we have, which is between 50 and 70 at any given time. All of their certifications have at this point expired. And we don't know how many, if we're going to have 20% of those, 80% of those, what percentage of those individuals are going to be wanting to come back, or have they moved on? And then we'll have to recruit and hire new people and get them certified as well. And that'll be an especially larger challenge than normal, because we won't have a pool to take those potential lifeguards in to train. So we're going to have to find other locations, do partnerships with some other communities to get access to their aquatic facilities to do training off-site. And then he's also going to fill in for a lot of our facility positions as well, because as Director Trumbull mentioned, we have several vacancies throughout our department. So we're certainly running on a skeleton crew right now. Club 55. So this is a group that really is probably one of our biggest struggles right now, because they have such a need for community outreach and interaction, social interaction with each other. There can really be a feeling of isolation. So we've really been trying to do everything that we can, and staff is stretching their creative muscles to come up with as many creative ways to keep the senior and older community involved and engaged with each other, to keep them from feeling isolated. So we're doing a lot of virtual programs, as well as clubs and meetings out in the park, Heritage Park Walking Club, Summit Parking Lot Bingo, chair yoga outside, virtual cooking demos, Zoom Wii bowling. We are transitioning, looking at transitioning to opening some activities indoor for this population as well, with billiards and card games. If you look at the photo in the upper right, you'll see an unfinished prototype of a divider that staff is working on right now. So you can have 4 people sitting around a card table and have dividers between each other so they can have that social interaction. There's a slot underneath where you can slide cards to each other. That was Stephanie built a toothpick prototype at her house and brought that into our maintenance staff, and they are working on creating a PVC prototype right there. So she built that prototype on a Sunday night at her house, just because she was racking her brains as to how she could do this. So it's just a testament to their dedication to getting things going. Meals on Wheels continues to provide meals and safety checks to older adults. So they're going, the good thing with Meals on Wheels is they're going out to the homes, and they can really check in and make sure these seniors aren't experiencing too much isolation, and provide them a little social outlet as well. Recreation programs, this has just been a hit, and it's been really well received, and staff has really just been amazing with their creativity with the types of programmings that they're doing. You can see in the upper right picture there, staff is doing karate using parking spaces as a natural divider for kids to get out there. We had the Bartlett's Candy Express on the lower right-hand side. Just fantastic programs that our staff is offering. We're doing some of our seasonal events aren't operating as normal, but we're doing some special events like Trick or Treat Story Trail. That's today. Home for the Holidays sold out. A lot of our programs are selling out very quickly or having very high participation. Unfortunately, we can't have huge numbers in all these programs, so it's tough to get into some of these programs because of our limits in the gatherings. But it's just been an outstanding response from the community for the programs that we're able to offer, and the virtual programs are getting a great response as well. Some of our upcoming programs and events that we've got coming up: Halloween Story Trail, like I mentioned, that's today. Going on right now. Carpool Cinema, Home for the Holidays coming up in November. Winter Wonderland Walk, Santa's Coming to Your Town. That's a similar program to where we brought the trick or treat activities to the families. We're doing the same thing with Santa's Coming to Town. And then some of our traditional events like the Turkey Trot and Tree Lighting Festival, we're doing those virtually this year. publications, you're gonna see a RBA at the next board meeting next Tuesday night to extend our contract with our printer. We had a contract with our printer for the Discover to do 4 issues. This past issue would have been their 4th issue. We're just proposing to extend their contract into next year to print 1 more issue, so they'll just print their 4th issue next year. We did not print a Discover this fall, and we're not going to do a printer, a spring summer guide as well. That'll really allow us to stay flexible and stay nimble, because we know that with COVID, we don't know, you know, a month ago, we didn't know what things would look like today, and we certainly don't know what things are going to look like a month from now. So we might have to pivot and change the way we're operating, do things differently by keeping things online and really doing some aggressive social media marketing. We're able to be a little more flexible than in the past with changing programs to meet the needs of the community, as well as any potential restrictions to keep everyone healthy. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
You eliminate the,
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing that.
trustees? Summer, please.
I just have a question on the part-time employees. What is the plan to bring, we'll try to bring some of them back if they're even still interested. It's been a while, but what is the plan and what is the timeline for that?
So we have been bringing part-time staff back as needed for our different facilities. For example, the golf course was the first one that we brought back. We pretty much brought back everyone that was working at the golf course. With the summit reopening, we've got a fair amount of our front desk staff and building attendants that have come back. So really, it's kind of, there's no wave that says by this date, we're going to bring everybody back. It's as needed based on each facility and operational needs for each individual area. And the first thing that we're doing is reaching out to all of our staff that were currently on payroll at the time. We have not terminated anyone or taken anybody out of the system that was in the system at the time, so that they were able to restart fairly quickly. Obviously, there are some that are saying, hey, I've moved on to another position at this point, which we totally understand. And we wish them the best in their future endeavors, and then we'll, as needed, begin to post for other positions. But also, if we have a need for certain positions, I believe we had this happen with our custodial maintenance at the summit, where we, since not everyone came back, we had some needs in those positions. Instead of posting those externally, the first thing we did is offer those positions to other staff that were internal, like a lifeguard type position, that where we didn't need them back to lifeguard, but we could use them in a different area. So we're offering any vacancies to internal staff who may not have the hours that they need in those positions first before we post externally.
Thank you. That's good to hear. I had a question about the block. I know that a lot of families depend on block, like after school care. Is there something that we're doing that the block is doing for families? Because, you know, elementary school kids are just starting to go back, but they're just a couple of days a week. So how are we handling that?
We don't have anything in person at this time. We're doing all virtual, but we're doing a lot. We have a fair amount of kids, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me right now, that are enrolled in the virtual program. And that includes a lunchtime check-in to keep them engaged, and then after school activities, and then some Friday night outside activities that we are doing as well.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's basically the same offerings as what we've had before, but all virtual right now.
Is it the same number of kids participating, or is it, or you said you didn't have the numbers? Okay.
I don't have the numbers right
Yeah.
now, but I don't think it's, I know it's not the same numbers as what we've had in the past. It's lower than what we've had.
I think last number I heard was about 40% participation.
Okay.
But I'd like to get an update too. So it's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, John that 40% is about correct, but I will get a participation for the block and send it out to the board.
Thanks.
Anne Marie?
Thanks. And adding on to the block, how are we reaching out to those kids that were part of it? Are we making calls to keep in touch with those kids? Because some of their families are probably still working and some of them were at risk. How are we doing that?
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to actually have John answer that question because he's more intimately involved in that position or that staff.
I've just said Laura Mortier, who you all know, has done a great job of reaching out to those families and staying engaged with them. As you know, they kind of had a tight network even heading into this. So she's been in contact with a lot of them. We're also doing on-site outreach programs. So we've been able to go to some of the neighborhoods that we've kind of made some extra efforts in for both junior high as well as elementary school students. And it's huge success. We're getting great numbers at those neighborhoods. Of course, kids are looking for activity and they're coming out. So right now we're working on some plans to bring them indoors, which has its challenges, as you can imagine, with some numbers and transportation being the key. So transportation is really will be our challenge. Will continue to be our challenge through this. And that kind of alludes to what Summer was asking about having kids here on site in the facility. Getting them here from school, and transporting kids in vans is, has some challenges. So those are things we're working through right now. And we're hoping to do some things in person here shortly as the weather turns. But like I said, Laura and the staff, she's had some of the block staff have come back on to work and have done a great job of staying engaged with families and reaching out to them.
Is it possible maybe to go to them? I know you said you've gone to some of the neighborhoods, but for the schools, maybe even going to some of the schools where we have the greatest need? If we can't bring them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, it's right. It's having one of the challenges we'll continue to face even with the outreach sites and being able to go there is as temperature changes, there's really not an indoor facility we can use on those sites. The clubhouses are usually pretty small. But always open to working with the schools and using those sites. That's kind of how that was our grassroots effort when we first started. So working with the schools and getting space in those facilities is kind of sometimes the hurdle. But once we get past that, we definitely could consider that.
I know the district uses something called Kids Time, and they usually do it in the cafeteria, but maybe you could do like the gym or something. I know that I've seen both of that happening. So maybe that's something.
Yeah, we've had some success way back when of doing that, splitting and flip-flopping spaces and sharing the gym and cafeteria, and that's kind of how we got our start. So I would certainly be open to that. As you can imagine, sometimes we're competing a lot with after-school activities and things in the building. So, but always a possibility. Just identifying some partners with the schools and getting some things started there.
All right, thank you. And then I also wanted to ask a question about Fellows Creek. So Greg, I hear you talking about Pheasant Run a lot. What happened with Fellows Creek? Did we see an increase there also? Because I've seen, every time I drive by there, it's full. So is that a
Yep. So Fellows Creek, I just got their monthly financial report this morning. Their rounds of golf are slightly up. Their revenue is also up probably about 50,000 on rounds of golf. That's primarily due to increased fees that they instituted this year. Other areas, they're the biggest issue that they would likely be ahead of last year, similar to us, but they do a lot more outings and banquets there, and they're down about $220,000 in outings and banquets because of the inability to have large gatherings. But other than that,
they're good. They're okay. Are they spacing out like you are at Pheasant Run? Are they spacing out golfers a little bit more?
we're back to our full capacity with the initial was that we were doing that, and they were doing that initially, and as restrictions were lifted, so they're back to full operations and regular tee times, just as we are at Pheasant Run.
Okay, thank you.
And we had to space them out initially more at Pheasant Run than they did at Fellows Creek, because without golf carts, Fellows Creek doesn't require golf carts all the time. Pheasant Run does because of the length of the course and the distance between some of the holes. So that takes extra time for a foursome to walk at Pheasant Run compared to Fellows Creek. So our tee times had to be spread out more to accommodate the time for walking.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Greg and team. That was very informative to see all the stuff you're doing and some of the ingenuity going on. Do you have a sense, or more than a sense, even a plan for if numbers start rising, what you'll do and when? Is it still follow? I don't even know if the governor's 5 categories are in effect anymore after the court order, or the health department, if they've issued something like that. And if numbers rise to a certain level, you'll decide to shut down facilities again.
Yep, so we're monitoring all that information. We're working with Will Hayes through our emergency manager's position, as well as the Michigan Health Department. They're the ones that are issuing the orders right now. So if anything changes, any additional restrictions come out, then we'll modify operations and or shut down operations if we need to. So that's the nice thing about not putting things in print and having people register for programs months in advance. If things change, we can change fairly quickly as well.
Sounds good. Okay. I figured you were, but I thought I'd give you opportunity to let us know what you're doing there. Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Okay, seeing no other comments or questions at this time. Michael, is there any public comment? Any raised hands from the public? Any public comment at this time?
I see nobody with a raised hand. I see no questions or anything written into the chat.
Okay, very good. All right, seeing no public comment, is there any additional trustee board comments at this time? Okay, seeing none, call for a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
Or
Okay, roll call, vote on the motion to adjourn.
Anthony,
Yes.
Foster,
I.
Graham Hudak,
Yes.
Segrist. Aye. Slavens.
Aye.
All right, Steve.
Michael, you're Seagrass.
Snyderman
Aye.
and Williams.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Be safe, be well. Have a good night. Greg, thank you for the presentation. Wendy, good job, guys. Have a good night, everybody.